the same cyclical nature. And if I figure it out, I can really help them. You know, I was thinking about, I was thinking to try and share with you the experience that comes from practicing these ideas. I was thinking about when my dad passed away in 2009. And this is truly, for me, the first time I could say with certainty these ideas in my psyche completely helped me, and I was strong enough to be able to help all these other people falling apart. His wife, his friend, he only had one friend. Yeah, my sisters, my brother. But I could tell you for certain, I held it together, not in a pretend way. Was it sad? Absolutely. It was horrible. But I wasn't caught in it like a whirlpool. I wasn't a mess. Was it terrible? It was horrific. But there was something about the view, the understanding, the insight that one gets from investigating the world this way that freed me from being sucked into that whirlpool. And I know I was able to help truly, definitely my siblings and his wife, but also I think him in the last hour of our interaction. And I wasn't a mess, I was like strong and helpful. And I'm not telling you this to say, oh, I do this and that's so good. Yeah, I'm telling you because I was thinking, what is it practically? Because can I tell you there's tantric paradises, and you know, we can debate long enough to see what's an enlightened realm like, and look at it from this tradition's point of view. And then once you have wisdom and understanding of the way of reality that is explained in this tradition, you can look at other traditions, like I truly felt when I went back to Argentina and had that experience with my dad passing. I could truly see how other traditions call these things by other names, but the experiences are there in all the great traditions of this world, because it's a human story. So bodhicitta is this thing that says, forget Buddhism for a second, forget any ism. Look at yourselves and this world, and we're on a rock floating in black space, we're one family. The wish to stop the suffering, not just for me but for others, is this thing we're talking about. And so to get the class into context, over 2,500 years of this tradition have looked at how do you internalize these things. So then you study, and the Gelugpas, which is the Dalai Lama's lineage, the lineage we've studied in this place is very list focused and fantastic at listing things, but let's not get lost in that. It points to an experience that is your personal map, your personal thing. And that's the only thing that they say, you know, drink the Dharma, and then the Buddha said, don't trust me, don't just because I said, it's your journey. And you're going to have your stories of having this experience about this world that's your particular world through this lens of yours. So here, over 2,500 years, they've got this code to say, how do you manipulate, how do you shape your mind using these tools, meditation, study, learning, compassion, you know, all these words, concentration, equanimity, blah, 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 blah. So now we're focusing on the idea of bodhicitta, the wish to be free of blah, 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 for the sake of yourself and others. And others. Who are your others? You know, who are your real others? You know, and I have a practice thanks to these ideas that whenever I'm on a train or walking in the street, I am forever aware of my terrible judging mind, you know. You're too smelly, you're too short, you're too fat, you're too long, you're too... I see it, you know, and then I'm paranoid about those things. You know, do they think I'm fat? You know, it's because I'm doing it constantly. It's subtle, you know. Today I had a different one. I was motivated, you know, I had to tell you stuff, and so I'm like, oh, I better behave good today. So, you know, I was very aware of judging, so I better not judge, because what if I fail? And the first thing that I saw in all these people walking around, because I had time coming here, a little bit of time, everyone's busy, blah, 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 chatter, chatter, chatter. I recorded this chatter at Think Cafe. It was lots of serious, blah, 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 blah. Important, you know. We all do it. But then it struck me as a real thing that every single one of those voices referred to a person that wanted to be happy and was a potential for a Buddha, was a potential for enlightened being, was potential sitting there going blah blah. There was a potential for a being that could be my teacher, a being that could be free from the blah blah blah, for them and their world. And then all of a sudden I was more interested in them than judging, you know. I was like, oh, maybe that one's got something nice to help me with, you know. And I paid more attention to them, and they seemed kinder, and they seemed nicer, and it was lovely. It was just lovely. And I thought they were my friends. What if you just walked around the street and said, you're all my friends? Like, think of your best friend, and you walk down the street and you're like, oh, that's my best friend. You know, I think Geshe Tashi Dorje, the Tibetan monk that comes here, I think he thinks that way. You know, he looks at everybody, he's like, oh, you're my best friend. You know, and everybody's like, hi, in New York. in Nepal it works. So anyway, the idea of bodhicitta is really a set of tools. And I had a misconception about this idea of morality, of vowed morality, because I came from not understanding a Catholic path, where I came from, you know, in South America. So I rejected it, it was wrong, it was terrible, I hated everybody, you know. And then one day I began waking up thanks to this, that a path is a path is a path. You follow the path and it'll lead you somewhere. And if it's been around for a while, it'll lead you somewhere. So bodhicitta is a state of mind that should color the entirety of your mind, just like walking down the street and seeing everybody, eventually having the uncontrived experience of seeing everybody as a lovely creature, as someone you're very interested in being happy with or seeing their happiness. Not because you're forced to, but because you want to. You imagine that it's possible. And when you do that, something happens in you. Something beautiful happens in you. And so Bodhisattva vows are promises we make to ourselves. All of them spoken by the Buddha, collected by a Sangha, commented by Tsongkhapa, verifiable lineage, blah blah, etc. Very nice. But when it lands on us, it has to be meaningful and practical. So the best way I can explain my struggle to make these things a reality, so you could use them because they are useful, is once you have an understanding of these vows, these promises you make to yourself and to your higher self in the form of a teacher or whoever you take these vows from, these promises are really there to protect. If you can see them as a shield to protect this sprout of goodness that is born in you that doesn't die when you die. That's why Bodhisattva vows are said to continue. Yeah, you take them once and that's it. They are with you next life, according to this path. So, you know, how do I make sense of that in New York? So the best way I can think of, because initially I thought of this as thou shalt, like, you know, my Catholic priest said, you should do this and thou shalt, and that tells me that I should do a hand gesture that's not a nice mudra, that you know, to the thou shalt. And after playing with them and failing at them enough to know my limit of where I need work and where I don't, I could experience and see and hopefully share how beautiful it is to make yourself a promise that out of all the things you could possibly do with this human life, you're going to nurture this seed for freedom for the sake of everybody around you. As a real thing. As a real thing that you experience walking down the street and seeing strangers and thinking you're my best friend. That's a much nicer way than walking around going, what do you got for me? And your bum is too big. you know, which is what my mind does, you know. I don't like your haircut. You know, like that's a ugh. The other one's like, ah. That's a much nicer way to live, you know. So we'll talk about the benefits of keeping these vows, keeping this protective layer over this seed that's growing, and they were around the 6 perfections. So we have the root vows, the big things that kill that seed. We talked about them, and then there were a whole set that were protecting the idea that should sprout in your mind around generosity and giving. That was the beginning of class 7.
Can I start off with one quick question?
Yeah.
If the vows,
You always, yeah.
If the vows are continuing, let's say somebody's taken it before, and in a second life they break one of the vows without knowing it.
I know, this is a problem. Yeah, it's good to think about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a problem.
All right.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Because what if you don't remember? What if you have the impulse to some of these vows, or you have some risk, then you have a hint that there's something in you that relates to them, right? So then we're forever breaking these. It's a problem. Yeah. So you think about it. Yeah, it's interesting. So then there were a set of ideas and promises you keep to yourself that say, because I have wisdom, because I understand the nature of reality, how karma and emptiness work, using this lineage's words, the ultimate, the godliness, and the actions that relate to them, yeah, in other languages, karma and emptiness. Then how do I keep a protective layer? I promise this and I promise that, keeps this sprout of morality, because morality will have a result equal to what you're enacting in this world. So if you're wishing goodness, you will experience goodness. Just like the thought of, these are all my friends, and all of a sudden my mind changed. So then there's a whole set of promises that you keep around that. And then there's a whole set of promises you keep around the main destructor of this sprout, which is anger. So the main thing that destroys any pool of virtue or collection of goodness is getting angry. You know, specifically at a Bodhisattva, if you follow the lines, blah, blah, blah. But just the idea of being enraged or angry uncontrollably, you know, it completely destroys any good feeling you have at that moment, and then it lingers for a long time, coloring everything you experience after. So patience here doesn't mean you get really good at waiting for a bus. That's useless, you know. So you're going to wait 8 hours for a bus without, you know, moving. That doesn't help anybody. Patience here refers to not getting angry when you probably should in this world. Yeah? When something happens that triggers you and you get this, patience is the practice of not enacting that and eventually not feeling that because you have a different understanding of where that came from. Yeah? So then there's a whole set of vows we talked about around the idea of protecting that state of mind. And then, and this is like, I struggled around this, I still struggle around this if I'm honest, you know. Joyful effort. Like this is the idea, the seed that you're protecting here with all these vows pertaining to the perfection of joyful effort is around being happy about doing goodness. Yeah? And for me, for a while, it's like, I have to be good. You know, like, it's such a chore. I have to, like, be kind to someone. No, seriously, such an inconvenience, you know? They want this, and then they're happy, and I have to do it. Yeah? No, seriously, sometimes my mind isn't so nice. Yeah? And so, and you think about, why would you want to generate a mind that is happy when doing goodness? Imagine if that colored your entire mind. Imagine what would happen. There's something in developing the perfection of joyful effort. There's something in you, for using psych terms, creating a habit or a pattern, a psychological pattern that gets a kick out of observing goodness that you helped create in this world. There's something in that. if you got an addiction to anything, what if you got an addiction to being happy when good things happen in the world and that you saw yourself start them off or help them? What kind of addiction, what kind of result would that addiction have? I mean, that would be, you'd be happy all the time and wanting to do goodness. And then what would be the result of doing goodness if you understand karma and emptiness? So this is a special one, and personal struggle for me. I'm a depressive kind, things are dark and grey, and that's why I like all the hell realm discussions. Yeah. And then we had a whole set of vows, promises to yourself that you trust were spoken by some enlightened being that could see the cause and effect and results of these ideas in a conscious mind around the idea of concentration, meditative concentration, shamatha, focus. What is a mind that is shy? What is it that you're protecting here, that you're nurturing? These vows are protecting a damage from occurring to the part of your consciousness that can focus single-pointedly, understanding the ultimate nature of things and isn't moved. So there's a whole bunch of vows that develop that. And why would that be helpful? Because we don't see the world that way all the time. We see it in a cyclical thing. But if you had concentration, you could see the cycle and not be moved to behave in a stupid way that would cause you suffering and those around you suffering later. So these vows around concentration are a magnificent shield from damaging that state of mind that you're developing over time. And now we get to talk for an hour and a half about the rest of the Bodhisattva vows. We have to get through 46 of them, right? And I think we're up to 27 or something, 26 or something. Yeah? Cool. So my job is to share with you a highlight of each. All the information is on the reading, because I would really like to get through the 46 today. And then there's a bunch of additional promises or states of mind that help you protect this inner behavior that you have. The most beautiful thing about practicing these things is your secret world as you're walking down that street that is so different from the world that you had before. You're sitting there trying to work with this new code that you understand will yield some magnificent results, but the working out, you're having your own lab, your own experiment, your own beautiful experiment around how this world can turn out for you, out of all the possible things that people want out of the world. Wisdom is the key. So these are the vows protecting the idea of wisdom, which is synonymous with emptiness. So the first one is rejecting the way of the listeners. And this is saying we should be careful around, you should make a promise not to reject any Hinayana according to the Buddhists, meaning any lesser way vehicle, yeah, not Mahayana. So any criticism of that, rejecting it in the way for a Bodhisattva, for a person that wants to reach enlightenment for the sake of everyone else, for you to say you don't need that lower stuff is a mistake, because you do need that lower stuff. That lower stuff isn't lower as in higher and lower, it's a different perspective of the same thing you're trying to get to. So you need to not only not reject it, but be really well versed at those. So it prevents you from making the error in a wise way that is wrong and this is right around a path. Yeah, in particular here is the listener's way, the Hinayana path. And the difference here from the root vow number 6 is this is very similar to the root vow number 6, which rejected the entire path. Yeah? So here you're saying, well, bodhisattvas don't need to do that because you're a Mahayana, for those of you that understand. The next vow is about making efforts in other system when yours is available. So what this refers to is if you've made a promise, if you've made a vow that I'm working to figure out the nature of this world and get free from those cycles for the sake of everybody else, and at some point you're like, oh, it's a little difficult, you know? I don't really want to help everybody else. And you have access to that study and that practice, and you've made that promise, and afterwards you go, you know, I don't really want to help everybody else. I'm going to go over here and just help myself. That's preventing you from doing that thing. Let's see if there's any exceptions. Niemens. We're up to 28. No. It's like you're discarding an opportunity here. It's like you've got an opportunity. You saw a window of opportunity, what to do with this consciousness of ours. And say, I could selfishly go and collect stuff for me and make myself happy and screw everybody else. And somehow you've already thought that that's not the only way, that there's a bigger way, there's a more meaningful way, there's a broader way. And even though you have that available to you and that opportunity, you choose not to. That you're sort of discarding that door, saying it's not really worth helping others.
Hector, question about that. Does that include like going and exploring other traditions? No, okay.
On the contrary, because then you'd be breaking 27. Yeah? Yes. No, but this is when yours is available, when there is a path, yeah, and you've chosen a path that says, I'm going for liberation, yeah, and I'm doing it for the sake of everybody else, and somewhere along the path you're like, you know, I'm just gonna chill in my apartment, you know, like, and all the information's available to you, and you can meditate and you can practice and and you still choose not to, then you break this vow. Yeah. It just means if that opportunity is available to your window is open for that, and consciously you see yourself available for that, and you choose not to. So you're sort of killing the seed of that sprout. You see it? Mm-hmm. Making efforts in non-Buddhist texts when no efforts should be made, and this is once you've and this reminds me of Joseph Campbell. I know it reads weird, yeah. This reminds me of Joseph Campbell, the first time I got inspired to study this stuff. And he said, you know, I think I've shared this with you before. He goes, I'm a person who picked over here and went to that tradition and studied in this tradition and studied to that tradition. And I'm watching his documentary on the power of myth. And I'm like very interested in all these mythologies he's talking about and all these world systems. He goes, and I understand them and I can see them, but unless you pick one and go deep, I'll never have an experience like that of a saint, he said. Because he goes, doesn't matter the tradition. If it's a path, pick it and go deep. And then you can have an experience like that of a saint, and that woke me up at the age of 20 something like nothing ever did. It was like someone put a fire in my body and I sat up and I stopped passively watching a stupid documentary. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden there was someone speaking directly at me from the old DVDs. I'm sure it was VHS. Yeah. Tape. Betamax. And that woke me up. I'm like, you know, because I'm doing everything else. Like, I love pleasure. I love life. I want to eat as much food as possible. That'll make me happy. You know, I want to kiss as many people as possible. That makes me happy. You know, I want to travel. That makes me happy. I want to buy a house. That makes me happy. I want to decorate. That makes me happy. You know, and then you travel, you decorate, you have a fun, and then you see everyone else is doing it, and then you have babies, and then your hair falls out, and then you're in the hospital, and then like everybody's doing this. And I wanted a unique experience, you know, because if you're unique, you're special, right? There's an ignorance in there for me. But when he said you can have an experience like that of a saint, if you pick one and go, I'm like, I'm in. So I went here to NYU and I did comparative religion and I picked. And at the same time, I met Geshe Michael on the street. Someone introduced me to him outside the Three Jewels on 6th Street. Wow. Same time. I'm at NYU studying all the other religions and I'm choosing, you know? And then this thing is in my face. This thing. And I kicked and screamed and pushed. Because I'm not doing that. That was my experience, and I'm sure each of you would have your own doorway that opens. I mean, otherwise, why are you in here on Thursday evening? You could be out there. It's full of restaurants. So here, yeah.
I think you've already made the point, but you know, for anyone who hasn't seen the Dalai Lama, like the first thing he always says is, whatever religion you have, like keep it. You don't have to change. So Buddhists aren't actually looking at, like, this isn't like a recruiting statement here.
Yeah,
like,
not at all.
Leave anything else behind.
If you've gotten a look into this vow, it means you've already studied. You've got some basis. Like, this course has been going for 2.5 years now, maybe a bit more. So you've got all the basis of the Buddhist teachings. If you got to look at this vow, then that makes sense, right? You're deep enough. You've gone beyond. You're beginning to step out of the Hinayana track and looking at Mahayana, and you have an interest. So that's what it refers to. But what it means is, replace Buddha with enlightened being, great teacher, wise person, and imagine that, like your grandma or your mom or someone that you highly respect and you follow. Replace that word Buddha with that word, and then all of a sudden, if you're taking guidance from that somebody because you truly believe they have insight into the world that you yet don't have, yeah, and you're learning something from them, and you think you can get to their state, this is saying, don't go and make effort somewhere else if you've already got this thing going with them. Yeah, and it reminded me of Joseph Campbell. It just means you'll see it's also similar to the next one. Once you commit fully is what it's saying. Commit completely. Yeah.
Can I ask, what is the result if you don't commit fully, or if you?
Yeah. It's so weird, right? Because I was always afraid as well, like, what's going to happen to me if this self-existent out there world catches me sneaking out and committing to something else, right? Understanding the nature of where these things come from. Where is the perceiver of you not doing this? Who is watching? It's you, it's your mind, yeah? I thought some catastrophe was going to happen. The catastrophe is that nothing's going to happen. That's the catastrophe. The catastrophe is that there is electricity through this cable and you cut the cable, and so there's no charge, and then life is mundane, and you're doing activity, and it may as well be going to the restaurants and kissing lots of boys and just not getting a buzz anymore. It would be equal to that. The result here for actually not turning on these promises is that you're just going to be it will just be another activity, and then nothing great's going to happen.
I think great things would happen. You would just wouldn't have the wisdom to know.
To see where they come from. Well, if you've been doing some of the other moralities, beautiful things will happen, yeah, and then you connect to them self-existently, and then they just become normal. You know, that's my answer to knowing that I've broken so many of these in the last 17 years, of at least having awareness of them for the last 15, of truly practicing them with fierceness for the last 3, yeah? Like waking up after 10 years going, I better do them properly. Once you figure out where your mind isn't going, and the result is no great result. It's like it just becomes another thing you do. You know, that's first thing that comes to mind. This relates to this a similar idea. This is about being attracted to other systems and other efforts. Once you've made a commitment to follow a path, it's like very much what we do right now when we go onto the internet and we click onto here and we get lost in YouTube, and then we go to Google and then there's an email clicking, and then your phone is ringing, and it's very scattered and nothing really gets done. Yeah, this is getting sucked into, if you're doing some cursory study, for example, in some other system, because you should investigate other things. But you're doing some cursory study, and then you're like clicking over here, and you get lost and you get sucked in there, where it's like a distraction, and you got lost in the distraction. So this is there to protect you from doing that with your spiritual life. see if there's anything else. Just getting sucked in. Okay. And then we had rejecting the greataway or rejecting Mahayana. This here is about the more subtle. It's different to vow 4 and 6 insofar as this is a more subtle criticism of the greataway, of the path. So imagine you found this path, this greataway, Mahayana, this Bodhisattva ideal, the ideal to reach enlightenment for the sake of others, and you're getting some buzz, but then you start using this part of your mind. It's not the, it's different from doing analysis. This is about doing judgment, yeah, of saying, oh, that's not so good, and that wasn't written so well. Jason Kappa could have written it much better, really. And you get stuck in that, you know, that author is not as good as the author that I know, because I studied this other author. And you see how it feeds that ignorant self, you know, like you're all of a sudden more wise than Atisha and Tsongkhapa and the Dalai Lamas, and making those more subtle judgments that are like the ones I make on the train, but about holy texts that could, if you looked enough, if you opened yourself enough, have magnificent consequences for you if you looked for the meaning. Yeah. So this vow here is to protect that same idea that is protecting vow 4, vow 6. It's also being protected here in vow 31.
Wait, can you go back?
I can, but unfortunately I have to do that.
Oh.
Did I do it wrong?
Oh.
Ba-bum.
Sorry.
Thanks a lot. No. Is that it? Is that correct?
Oh,
Yeah, I can't quite see.
No, one more.
Should very
Next
funny
one.
one.
Are we there yet?
One more.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yay.
Let me just catch up and make sure I tell you what I'm supposed to tell you. I'm going to do this for a second. Apologies. I'm going to do that. I'm going to... Did you all get that one or not already? You sure? Here it goes. Here it goes.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Happy birthday. Reset. Okay. Praising yourself, criticizing others. Does that sound familiar?
Number 1.
Correct. So number 1 was around being driven by this desire. This one is driven out of pride or anger or self-cherishing. So again, it's protecting the idea of doing this us and them. You know, I'm better and they're worse. Do you remember the essence of this one? Do you remember it was mostly relating monastically or to anybody sharing information around wisdom? Do you remember that?
You're not supposed to be jealous of other teachers.
That's right, yeah. So it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
and swap the idea of other teachers with your friends who have spiritual insight and who are practicing. I mean, I do this all the time. I have to keep my mind like, I'm a little jealous of other people that deliver wisdom well. Because, I mean, I should be doing it best, right? I mean, where did that come from? I've got no idea. If you genuinely want the benefit of other beings, you want other people to deliver this stuff and any path, not just like you, better than you. You want to learn from them, but there's something in us, some stupid thing, at least in me, that looks at other people and gets a little happy when they don't do it properly, and a little sad when they did it a little better. I mean, it's true, it's horrible. We all have it. We have it about normal things, you know, like people in your work that you're great friends with, and then all of a sudden they do a great report, and your boss, your mutual boss says, "Oh, did you see what's his name? He's amazing." I'm like, "Yeah, he's great." Yeah, we do it all the time. Yeah, so this is that one. Yeah, out of anger or pride or, you know, self-cherishing. Of course, there are exceptions, but I think you remember those. You know, you want to teach somebody a lesson, you're sick, you're asleep, you know, etc. They're interesting because here on vow 32, he didn't say this on the other ones. He says, it's okay so I feel a little exempt. I'm still talking about 32. It's okay to play with the idea if you're doing it for the benefit of others in order to attract them to a path that will serve them. So in other words, oh, I'm such a good teacher. And that will draw a laugh, or compared to Sam Muglia, definitely, if you do it like.
I see what you did.
You see what I did? Yeah, you see what I did there? So, but be careful, right? Because we trick ourselves into doing that. So it says, if your heart is really to help others, and you think that one of the ways you could help that one in particular, or this group in particular, is to somehow say, you should listen to me. I mean, unless it's a joke, I don't know how else you would do it, and not some ugly, In fact, to clear that up, Sam is a wise creature who I go to for sometimes confession. We'll talk about that idea seriously, because his mind is so fast and furious with Dharma, burning with Dharma, that I'm a little jealous of him, and I think no, okay. So you've made this commitment. You want to figure out how to get free from suffering for the sake of all living beings, right? And you really want to do this with your human life, and you know that the Dalai Lama's in town, or that there's this great wisdom over there, and you choose not to out of laziness or pride, or that, then you break this vow, about 33. Yeah. And this one, it's such a special thing. I'm going to give you a little break then, and then we'll start class 9. Yeah. Focusing on the vessel and the letter is not seeing a Dharma teacher, and this means anybody that's got wisdom for you, yeah? Not seeing them as an enlightened being, not seeing them as a Buddha. Not to treat the beings that you are perceiving through your senses as having some insight, not to help yourself see them as your connection to the divine in any tradition. Yeah? When you start focusing on, his hair is a little weird and he wears that thing and his hair's falling off and he speaks Spanish or whatever. When you do that, why would that be damaging? Okay, why would that be damaging to you? Forget the teacher. Why would that chip away at your wish for enlightenment for the sake of others? And why is it in the idea of wisdom?
You stop believing in what is being taught.
So in a practical way, absolutely, you're like, it's just normal stuff. Might as well watch TV, right? It's just another blah blah conversation. Oh yeah, I heard that before. Yeah, and then nothing really inspires you. That's a nominal way. Ultimate, give me something deeper. Yeah.
Well, it's distracting you from the larger purpose. Like
Okay,
you're
so
not, you're not
yeah.
seeing the forest for the trees or whatever.
Okay.
you're saying.
Nice. So yeah, if you're focusing on all the accoutrement and the thing, and that one's not a monk, and that one's a monk, etc. Okay, good. Mm-hmm.
Does it maybe have something to do with seeing it as self-existent and not making it like if I see you as a Buddha and I practice that, I'm planting seeds to see myself as a Buddha or something?
Mm-hmm. What were you gonna say?
Judging, just in general, that's just sabotage, and like you're cutting down the thing that could be what you may become, like the highest potential. You're staring at the potential, and then you're just diminishing it, and then you're the great where you got. So then you will create the reality of no place up higher to go.
Yeah. If there is no nature here, from its own side, yeah, I have a whole perception about me. Yeah. Your perception of me, I have no clue. Yeah. Where did your perception come from?
If you judge and you're not one like me, you will fall. Isn't that
That's the Buddhist line in the Abhidharma, right? Cliff, you were going to say something?
As I see you as a Buddha at this very moment, every word that you utter is, there's Shakyamuni Buddha sitting before me, every word is so precious and incredible that I pay strict attention and I am absolutely, it's sacred.
Yeah, yes.
Similar with the sutra, that's why we don't throw them on the ground and we revere it. And that way we read it, it's something that's profound and special.
You're either generating that perception or refraining from attacks on that perception of, I don't like his hair, etc. Right? So you're either defending, hopefully you're having that perception, and if you're not, you're defending the hopes of that perception from the attacks of normality, right? Oh, he's too fat, or he's, etc. Who benefits from your high focus and attention? It's your mind. You're churning through the conduit of your consciousness, sublime, utter wisdom. Yeah? Living enlightened beings, communicating directly to me. You're habituating that through the code of the conduit of your mind. That's coming out through your mind later. Karma says greater, equal to the content that goes in, but greater. Small seed, big result. But where is it going to come out? Over there? In Mars? It's coming through your consciousness. Next time you sit and listen to somebody, or you have an interaction with someone, you will have that charge because you've planted it, you streamed it in your consciousness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. I have a question because I have had that feeling with other teachers some other time, that it's like I'm listening to Dharma, but I don't like them.
Mm-hmm.
How do you plan causes for that to change?
Mm-hmm.
Because that focus and that idea, it's coming from me, but it's forced on me with my karma. So even I try consciously to say, she's not a bitch, it still comes up.
Yeah.
So how do I plan different causes for that?
So first of all, let me just say there is discernment, okay? So there's the understanding of where you actually listen for content and you use your logic to say, so if I'm sitting here and you go, okay, everybody grab a crystal and eat the crystal and then you will be fine, and you must see me as an enlightened being. Yeah, the crystal's going to damage your gut. Yeah, you should probably say, I know eating crystals is not healthy. Yeah. So I know I only make up stupid examples. I'm sorry.
I just know people.
Oh, okay. Eat the crystal.
Yeah.
So let's take that as an example, right? First of all, Hector's annoying. He's talking about crystals again. Yeah. But maybe if I'm charged up and I say, if this is coming from me, just use karma and emptiness. Yeah. If this perception is empty of having an existence from its own side, if there is no nature absolute over here projecting out there, I'm having this perception, they're having an awesome perception, they're having an average perception, whatever. But I'm having a crappy perception of this guy telling me to eat crystals. Yeah? And all I want to do is run away. First of all, I would sit there and go, logically I shouldn't do that. So I'm pretty certain about that. I'm not eating the crystal. Yeah? At least to the level of my understanding right now, that would harm me. That's not something I should do. Clear. But is there something else talking to me at the moment? Is there something else that's trying to trick me to see something I don't see? And maybe it's just as simple as eating my pride. Yeah, I can work on pride here. Yeah? This guy is telling me to eat crystals, but he's also saying these other things which are meaningful to me. So why am I got them mixed up? So I would listen in between the lines and try and force out of the experience I'm having some hope that there is still a voice in there of wisdom talking to me. But if there was such a thing as an ultimate wisdom observing this experience within me, discernment would be the thing that I now need to work on. Yeah, because it's saying do something harmful and you'll get a good result. And I know that's not true. Maybe it's here to solidify that idea for me. So that's one way of explaining what do I do when I have obvious things that conflict with what I should be doing with this vow. So I keep this vow if I make efforts against the perception that says, you're stupid, next. You're stupid, next. I may not agree with that teaching. I may not agree with that whole system. At some point I might make a decision that's not for me. But to actually discard it altogether and realize that, and not to realize that this experience for a bunch of people is helping them in some way. And they're listening to wisdom, at least lets me practice the idea of karma and emptiness, yeah, which verifies my understanding of the world. That's something I would do, and any struggle against this idea is already not breaking the vow. Yeah, so as soon as you have a struggle against developing that idea, it's not breaking that vow. Yeah, for the secondary ones. Does that answer?
A little, yeah.
Yeah. This is hopefully what I want to talk about next Thursday, the last time we get together, is this, well, how do I actually do that one? Because that's difficult, and we can talk about real scenarios, and I don't promise to have all the answers. I'm hoping that in the room, those of you who have practiced some Bodhisattva activity can share in the discussion, yeah? And we can talk about, well, I have this split, and I have this experience, and I have this dilemma, and understanding and sharing with each other how we get past those, maybe we get some wisdom together. Yeah. So let's. Next thing I want to talk about at this point in the text, in the commentary from Tsongkhapa, he talks about these two things that completely destroy the secondary vows, right? Completely break them. The two things, the two reasons, and these two states are he calls them these two states of mind, and then he calls these other two states, and he keeps referring. From here on, he refers constantly to these things that force us to behave in a way that begin to shrivel up and destroy the goodness that we're building. And the two states are either klesha based or non-klesha based, are the other two. What's klesha? What's a klesha attack?
Mental affliction.
A mental affliction. It's when you're sitting there and things look fine, and then all of a sudden you don't know why, but you just cannot control your mind's perception. You go a little crazy, you start making judgments, you have a complete mental overtake that is taking you away from virtue. And this is either you want to hurt somebody or you're angry towards someone. And these are the two kinds of the klesha type attacks that will definitely destroy any virtue of any of these ideas you're trying to flower with these vows. And then he says the other two, if you don't have a klesha attack, if you don't have your mind lost in a mental affliction, overwhelmed by the results of your negative karma, which is a mental affliction, you have some non-klesha, just out of laziness, or you don't consider the promise you made to be a valuable or important promise. Those two others also destroy the nature of this thing you're trying to grow. And this is really difficult for Westerners. I want to say the last two, Leilo and Nyomle. The last one in particular, this, do you remember the vow to make offerings 3 times a day through the 3 doors, body, speech and mind? Remember that vow? So for example, if you had a mental attack, you might just go, this is stupid, or whatever, and you're angry and you want to hurt your teacher or something, and that's an obvious way to break that through the normal two, through the wanting to hurt or anger. But the non-klesha is just because you just don't feel like it. You don't particularly have a negative state of mind coloring your activity on this world. You made a promise some point to get free from this cycle, to get free from suffering for the sake of you and your sister and your mom and all your loved ones. And then all of a sudden you're like, I just don't feel like it. So you spend all day just doing nothing. You don't even care. And so you say, I'm not going to do that. Or, it's not important, it's not going to give me a result. In fact, it's just something someone made up. This one, the last one, don't consider the activity important, is particularly poisonous for us. Because very similarly, like we spoke about seeing a teacher as the Buddha, this is the same about these words. And at the end of today, hopefully we'll talk a little bit about where do you really think, and be honest with yourself. You know, when I'm honest with myself, I'm a little shocked at my reply mostly. Where do you really think these ideas came from, really? Not what you're supposed to say, but where do you really think they came from? Someone made them up? Some being that had insight into the ultimate nature of experience, some Jesus, some Buddha, some being like that, had a direct experience, complete wisdom, understanding of the entire experience of humanity on this planet and time. And they saw that if you keep these things, a result will come. Are you on that side of the spectrum? I know where I am. I'm not really often on that side. I have to force myself to be on that side. But that's your personal, that's your job as a practitioner of a path, is to keep your path clean and tidy. The nature of this world is that the path will get dirty. Entropy, is that? Yeah, that happens here. Things break down. The road will get dusty. You should clean it if you want to travel the road. With that said, let's have a 7-minute break, which means 10, and we'll be back at 1:45, and we'll talk about more stuff.